Here? Okay. Afternoon, I guess. Good evening. How you guys doing? Good. Great. We've got a jury, which is great. I sort of hoped that we would get one in Seminole County, thought that we would, and I'm very glad that I was right, because this way we don't have to trouble moving around. We get one here, and we get to start. Looks like we're starting openings on Monday, so that starts our calendar of 2 to 4 weeks. Of course, the judge, when she makes a decision on the Frye hearing that just concluded, will impact the time of the jury trial, because if Frye happens and the information comes in, that'll probably add about a week to it, I would imagine. And if it doesn't, it'll take a week away. So whatever it will be, we'll figure that out once she makes a decision. But that's where we are. I'm just really glad we're sort of moving this along. I like the pace. It took us a couple of weeks to get a jury, which is what we said it would take. So we're certainly on track with that. And hopefully we're going to be right about 2 or 3, maybe as much as 4 weeks in the trial. So just looking forward to getting started. It's been a long time waiting. So that's where we are.
Is George encouraged with the jury selection? Where is he in all of that?
I think he's really encouraged that it's done. You know, it's the waiting that is frustrating for everybody, particularly him. He's been waiting 15, 16 months to clear his name. And now we get to start. So that's real good. So I think, you know, he's happy that we got the jury in place, because rather than this process that you guys have been so patient for that we have to do, now that's done. And we can move forward to, you know, the real stuff, the evidence and all that. So.
Mark, why was it so important for you to challenge the state's strikes on the 4 women?
Well, because the case law is pretty clear that we are not to have a jury that is impacted on by gender bias, race bias, or any type of bias. And it became very apparent to me that there's strikes, you know, 4 in a row. I think that you would, and it's almost simplistic at that point to say that they were striking white women. And they're not supposed to do that. And if you're going to do that, you have to do it for what we call race-neutral reasons. And if they had good race-neutral reasons, then the judge would allow the strikes. It became apparent, I think, to the court by her ruling and to me by my objection that they were not doing it the way they should. You know, I don't assess to it any more than that, but you know, whenever they ask, just like they did with me, we have to be able to come up with race-neutral reasons, and then that's the process works. We're all pretty familiar with the case law in that regard.
Are you concerned at all about how your strikes for the 2 black women will be perceived by the public?
No, I don't think so, which is why I'm glad that the state asked for explanations on the record. I think had they just been struck by me and then no explanation given, it might have been a bit more concerning to those people who would then have opinions. Well, were they stricken just because of their race? So I was really glad to have the opportunity to present on record some of the information that we had on those jurors as to why they were not, or I had concerns at least, of their ability to be fair and impartial jurors. So actually I think the process works pretty well when you have what we call a Neal or Batson inquiry, because it allows us to put on the record for all to see and hear the reasons for the strikes. And I think that if you looked at that evidence, and there was some other evidence that we went over with the state themselves, which is why I think they agreed to the first strike once we showed them what we had, and I think they realized that that was certainly a race-neutral or a non-race-based strike. So glad to have the opportunity to clear it up for people, though.
Are you happy that there's 6 women? Because typically, or do you feel that women tend to be more sympathetic to the defendant?
I don't find that either way, having picked, I guess, 100 or 125, I forget, jurors. The one thing I am certain about with juries is I will never be able to tell what they're thinking. So 6 women, 3 men, 3 women, I don't think that it really matters. What I do think we have, and what I think is very important, and I'm very happy with this, is we have 6 jurors who have told us that they will be fair, they will be impartial, and most importantly, because I said this to you last week, that they're not going to allow any external pressures, sympathy, biases, political, you know, expediency to affect the way they're going to look at the evidence and apply the law to it. As soon as now that we've gotten that, I'm very happy. So that's where we are. Looking forward to Monday. Yes?
Do you expect the defendant to take the stand?
as I've said, every time I'm asked that question, that's a dynamic decision that's got to be made within the context of a trial. A trial that, don't forget, the defense proves absolutely nothing. This case will fall on the fact that the state cannot convince a jury beyond a reasonable doubt with their evidence that a crime was committed by my client. So I think that's the only standard we're going to have to get to. And when we get to that they simply can't prove their case, we'll be done.
Mark, what would you say to people out there that don't understand the process and are upset that there's no black jurors on the panel?
I will tell them to look at the questioning. If they're going to have an opinion, rather than it be just a knee-jerk reaction, to tell me that you've watched the process, tell me that you've talked to or just watched us talk to every juror, that you listened to Mr. Delayondo when he did his questioning yesterday, and you listened to me when I did my questioning today. You go down the list, which was random, and you see how it happened. The state struck the first black juror, and then we got our 6. I had questions about 2 black jurors on their ability to be fair and impartial, and we've talked about that. That's been, I think, now put on record as to my thoughts, and the judge agreed that they were race-neutral reasons. So while people can look at it and have this reaction, there's no blacks in the jury, or there's no this, or there's no that, or there's no men on the jury, tell me that we did something wrong in the process, and I'll agree with you. If you look at that process and say it was done fairly, then the result is fair.
You have a Hispanic defendant. How important is it that you have a Latina on the jury?
Well, a couple of things. One, we're not discussing the demographics. I mean, obviously we can tell the women. We're not discussing the demographics of their heritage. So my real focus is 6 people, fair and impartial, listen to the facts, apply the law. And that's all I have ever wanted in a jury, and I really believe we got one here.
You talked about people being from Seminole County. At least 2 of the jurors that I could tell moved here pretty recently. What does that mean to you? And is that at all important? Did that make them at all more, make you want to pick them more?
No, actually, I didn't even, I noticed because I knew that a couple of them were recent. They all lived in Florida, I think, for a while before that. Well, one was from Chicago, moved down recently. No, they got lucky enough or unlucky enough to get on the jury panel as quickly as they got down here, so they're qualified jurors. I'm very good. What I'm really focused on is people who will not make up their minds until they hear all the evidence, and that they will apply it fairly. Then, you can be from Kansas, and you can sit on the jury, as long as you agree to do that. And of course, you can't do that in Florida, but.
Why did you try so hard to keep P67 when you knew you weren't going to get that far?
Well, because I don't believe that there was a proper cause for a strike. So if he could have been the last one on the panel, it doesn't mean that I'm going to change my opinion on what the law and how the law should apply. So I thought that he could be a good juror. He didn't have any language problems that ever evidenced themselves before. We could have had the opportunity to look into that, and neither side thought it was significant enough to look into. And it's an inconvenience to everybody. I think he's in a better position than most, because he's going to get paid for 30 days. We didn't get to him, so everything's fine. But the strength of my argument was because of my belief in the law.
As you stated, the state had struck the first black juror, that was B35.
Right.
Who seemed to be he seemed like he'd be fair and impartial. Did you think about challenging that strike?
Yeah, I thought about it. Had they struck another black person, I probably would have. I don't like to guess or, prognosticate. But, I understood that the state might have some concerns with that juror. So I looked at it that way. But, oh, I have no idea. They probably have a better idea than I do. There's generic ways to do it. You can start with law enforcement, lay out the groundwork as to what the cops did. That's one way. But, you'll have to ask them. So I know how I would have done it back when I was a prosecutor, but I doubt they'll take advice from me. All right. Go right ahead.
Are you confident that you have a jury? You mentioned a few weeks ago that you wanted to have a trial in Seminole County, that you wanted, no matter what happened,
Well, what I said was I would hate to have to go to, Pinellas County or some other place and import jurors, because I'd much rather residents of Seminole County decide the case, and that's what we have now. I've heard people who have commented upon this case saying all they want is a fair trial. And that's all I want, and I'm hoping that we will all believe and present that same way whenever the verdict comes in. All right, thanks very much for the time, I appreciate it, and take care.